I'm just catching up on the stripping banana.
Oh, you didn't see it previously? That's what I sent you when you're on your Xbox.
I love it says music by Paul McCartney, and then there's just a grinning banana stripping flirtatiously.
60-minute man. Look here, girls, I'm telling you now, they call me love and dad. I'll rock 'em, roll 'em all night long. I'm a 60-minute man. If you don't believe I'm all I say, come on.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the ugvm podcast. I'm your host Andy Kavanagh, but you can call me deKay, and with me today are Zoe.
Hello.
And Luffer.
Hi.
And Kendrick.
How you doing?
Hello all you people. And is everyone okay?
Yeah.
Feeling groovy.
Good. I've got some very exciting news to start with, which will interest all of you, I'm sure. I've bought a 4th copy of Hyrule Warriors.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it arrived today. It was very exciting. So I now have 4 copies of Hyrule Warriors, and the Switch version isn't even out yet.
Catch me up here. This is a 4th copy that duplicates a 3rd copy that you already have for one console in addition to 2 copies you have for a separate system. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically I bought the digital version on the Wii U and then the digital version on the 3DS and then a physical copy on the 3DS, and now I have a physical copy on the Wii U.
I don't know what's more pathetic, that you've done that or that I was able to keep track of it.
Yeah. So I have this nasty feeling I'm going to buy both versions for the Switch as well. But anyway.
Yeah. Talking of digital versions of things, just going off topic a little bit. An episode of the podcast a while ago, I mentioned I was looking at Metroid as one of my games I wanted.
Yes.
Well, I was looking a couple of days ago to buy it, and on Amazon, the physical 3DS cartridge version is $28.99. And the digital download code is $39.99.
Oh,
yep, that's par for the course, I think.
Yeah, there are a few
Physical
places
stock.
you can get it cheaper digitally, but at the moment probably you're not going to get much first-party thing in it, so it's not going to reduce that much.
No.
Well, physical stock will typically be discounted as people have to move things through their warehouses or wherever they're keeping them, whereas digital downloads, the value is calculated into whatever insane spreadsheet is driving the sales, and so there's no incentive or need to discount them.
No, that's true. No. I mean, my reason for... Well, I'm doing the reverse of you, Kendrick. I'm actually moving back to physical copies rather than moving towards digital. But the reason I got another couple of copies of this is it's a game I want to keep forever. And I'm concerned at some point in the future, perhaps that's not going to be possible. So, anyway.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Well, needless to say, I'll be buying the physical version rather than paying an extra £10 for a digital code.
Yeah, that's true. Although, I mean, both digital copies I bought originally, I managed to get discounted anyway, and then hanging on and waiting for the physical copy to drop to peanuts is that was the best way around for me in the end. So,
well, if we're going to lean into this topic at all, then it makes sense. The advantages of a physical copy still outweigh the convenience of a download. You have it now, you have it forever. It might be usable on a backward compatible system in the future. You can transfer it. You can take it with you. You can have it with you even when the internet is down. I don't believe that the maths of this have been fully absorbed by the game buying public just yet.
You can also leave it on a train and lose it.
This is true.
I'm not likely to put my Wii U on a train, I don't think, but...
It's becoming increasingly irrelevant anyway, because once they switch the servers off, you can't access the game physical or not. I bought Destiny 2 on digital, even though I tend not to buy things on digital for precisely the reason that I can't play it forever anyway. I can only play it until they say I can. So,
does Destiny not have a single player mode?
No, the whole thing's online all the time. If the servers are down, you can't do anything.
Yeah, there's again, this is a little bit off topic, but there's a channel on YouTube called Tested. It's a website as well. It's a very good website channel, and they just recently reviewed a laser cutter, and I can't remember the name. Is it Form Labs maybe or something? I can't remember the actual name of the company. But their their laser cutter requires an internet connection to operate at all times. And
Nice.
it's a piece of hardware that costs thousands of pounds to buy. And if it's not got an internet connection, it won't cut your laser project.
Interestingly, this is also a problem for American farm equipment, believe it or not. There are certain tractors and they're not JCBs, but machines of that variety where not only do they require an internet connection in order to operate and get over-the-air updates, but you can't repair them without the participation of the vendor who has the exclusive rights and, more importantly, the system private key in order to apply those updates.
Does farmland in the heart of the American South have stable internet connection?
The short answer to that question is no. There is no stable internet in the rural areas of the United States, and that's one of the reasons why our average broadband connectivity statistics are so low. Any Yahoo in the West Country is going to have 10 times as fast an internet connection as a massive conglomerate corn farmer in Nebraska.
So how do they connect then?
Generally over mobile phone networks, which are terrible because they're outdated CDMA, or over dial-up.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. Welcome to the richest country in the world, ladies and gentlemen.
It's like third world country.
Yeah. A tractor with an actual dial-up modem.
Well, no. Okay. What happens is there's a router that's connected to someone's local internet on a farm whose connection to the main pipe is a dial-up modem.
Okay.
I think you're lying. I've played Farming Simulator, and this doesn't happen in that at all.
We seem to have deviated from our scripted our scripted topics a bit.
Yeah, I don't know where tractors came from. Anyway, so I'll move on to some other actual news. And I know you're all enthralled by the ZX Vega Plus saga, which
It's the only reason I'm here, to be honest.
Good. It's the only reason anyone's here. Which, despite previous news sections, and I've talked about it where I've said otherwise, it's still rumbling on. In the last few weeks, there's been some events that have happened, which it's taken a bit of a turn. So one of the 4,000 odd backers of the system managed to take Retro Computers Limited to the small claims court to try and get their money back. And David Levy, who is one of the directors of RCL, he didn't turn up to the hearing. He was going to, only the last minute he decided to give the reason for not attending because he was worried that trolls might cut his penis off. He actually said that. So, and this is David Levy, who, as one of his other roles he has, as well as being director of RCL, is he makes sex dolls, which I suspect might literally cut off his penis. So, so he didn't turn up, and as a result, the court ruled in the favour of the backer, and so they're expected to pay him some money back now. Which is great for him, but the important thing is it now opens the door to other backers to do the same thing, and even
this
more.
Not turning up to court. That's known as a default summary judgment. Is that correct?
I don't think it was quite as simple as that because it's a small claims court and not an actual prosecution. So the fact that he didn't turn up doesn't necessarily mean that it rules against him automatically, but it certainly doesn't help his case because he wasn't there to answer questions to defend himself, basically, although he did provide some supposed evidence. But the other thing about this now is that as part of the hearing, the court ruled that, or rather they ignored the RCL's claim that money to Indiegogo for a product is a pledge. And it actually uses the word pledge on Indiegogo's site, as far as I'm aware. But they are saying that it's not a pledge, it's an order. And as a result, you've paid for it, you should get your product, or you should get a refund. That's the law. It might set a precedent for other crowdfunder stuff.
Who's saying it's an order? The court's saying it's an order? Or
the court has said that Indiegogo, I believe, but certainly RCL's post on Indiegogo, says that the money you're giving them is a pledge, okay? Whereas the court have ruled that it's not a pledge, it's an order. So you are actually ordering a device, or you're ordering some kind of product.
Now, this is problematic for one reason I can think of. Indiegogo has a mechanism similar to Kickstarter in that you're permitted to pledge a very small amount of money without actually expecting anything in return. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes. I mean, there's various tiers and things, yeah.
So it's possible to just pledge £1, and then there would be no argument that constitutes an order of any kind.
Yes,
so I don't know that the courts have considered that particular case of or that particular circumstance rather.
No, I don't know, but certainly in this case, for something substantial, a substantial payment, which you're paying more than just the here's a few quid to get on and produce this product. You're actually paying some money in the hope that they will, and that you will get one, and then taken that and decided that that's something that they can class as an order. So it sets a precedent potentially for other crowdfunded stuff, not just other backers for this product. So.
I think that the way around that is they'll just change it to a donation, won't they? So that there's nothing, you're not expecting anything. They'll just say it's a donation and we'll send this as a gift.
Yeah. It starts sounding a bit shady when it gets to that point, though, doesn't it? It's not.
And they won't get people throwing in the same amounts of money. Like I wouldn't have thrown the absurd amount of money I did at Shenmue 3 if I wasn't expecting to get a nice shiny box of toys for it.
Yeah, exactly. So the onus now is on Indiegogo to do something about this, I think, as well. And in actual fact, they have. So they've come out and they've said that RCL have to substantially update backers before May. Otherwise, they're going to start proceedings to start recovering the money themselves. And remember, this is like £500,000 or just over £500,000. So that's a substantial amount of money that they need to recover.
Looking at the big picture here, is there a danger that, in addition to setting other legal precedents, that this is going to discourage other creative types from initiating Indiegogo or Kickstarter projects into the future? Because half the point of these systems is to distribute and spread out the risk so that you can get an idea of what your market looks like before you bring your product into being. It's a bit like the stock exchange in that way. You're getting more hands involved and spreading the risk out.
Sure. Yeah, I think also with that is that you only have the thing funded if you reach your required amount, don't you? So in terms of the actual person that's running the project, by the time it reaches their threshold, in theory, they should have the funds to manufacture it. So I'm not sure it will affect it that much.
Well, more importantly, exactly like the stock market, the people who are contributing the investment, as it were, because they're taking on that risk, they have to be educated, for lack of a better word, that there is a possibility that the thing they're funding might not succeed, that it might not come into being.
Sure. The thing with this case specifically is there are hundreds of reasons why things might not come into being. Companies might go under. Products are simply not financially viable. Designs may be no good. People may die. There's all kinds of reasons why things don't happen. What has happened here is they've squandered the money on something else and not on the product they would have been producing. If they'd have had something tangible or near tangible and the money's run out and they've gone, look, we've done our best, here's what we have done, here are our plans and our designs, and here's the process we've gone through, and here's the evidence that we've actually ordered some of these things or tested some of these things, or actual real people have seen some of these things, that might be a bit different to somebody dissecting all of their accounts and pretty much proving that every penny has gone elsewhere and not on the product at all. And that's what's left the sour taste in everybody's mouths with this, I think, is the fact they keep saying it's still coming, it's still coming, it's still coming, whereas it's been pretty much conclusively proven not only is it not coming, it can't come, there's no money.
So it's not that they're con artists, it's that they're incompetent con artists.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is going off what I've read, so legally it's not necessarily 100% the truth, but it appears that some of the people involved in RCL in the past have pulled similar stunts to this before. Perhaps not on this scale, perhaps not this public, but certainly not, 100% legit.
This was done on Indiegogo, wasn't it? Not Kickstarter.
Yes, Indiegogo.
I don't know how they set it up, but I know that unlike Kickstarter, Indiegogo allows you to select whether or not it's an all or nothing campaign.
Yes.
So you can have Indiegogo campaigns where even if you don't reach the target amount, you still get all the money.
Yes, I believe so. So
Which seems like a fundamentally terrible idea.
Well, it's the opposite to Kickstarter's stretch goals, where in Kickstarter, if you raise 2 or 3 or 5 times what you plan to, you can add additional features or components that you nail to the side of the thing that you promised to deliver.
Mm. So I'm not really sure. Like on Indiegogo, if you only raise half the amount of money, then you clearly can't do the thing you said you were going to do. What do you do
we
with
can
the money?
deliver a car with 2 wheels on it.
Yeah. So guess you just hang on to it.
Yeah. Or it gives you a start, and then once you've started making this product, maybe you're able to get funding elsewhere or additional funding from Indiegogo or something else, or you rein it in a bit and you reduce either the quality of the product or some of the things within it. It depends on the thing. I don't know what the solution is basically, but it's quite important what's come out of this now is that it may fundamentally change how people see Indiegogo, or possibly even how Indiegogo works in the UK at least. Obviously this is only a UK case, so things may change, but anyway, so they've, as I said, they've asked RCL, or they've told RCL, or demanded from RCL even, that they need to substantially update backers. So RCL have done their usual thing when somebody in the media or legally kicks up a fuss. They say, oh, well, there's all these trolls and there's all this spam. We're getting thousands of emails a day that spam, and we just can't deal with them. So things aren't getting done because we're dealing with the spam and the abuse and the trolls. And I don't think they understand that it's actually possible to just close the lid of your laptop and not look at these things and get on and do your job, which they're clearly not doing. But anyway, so what they have done is they've gone out and they've produced a video which shows absolutely nothing. It's a picture of some kind of looks like an injection molding machine or something along those lines, and they've added some music to it and some terrible 80s visual effects. And apparently this is them producing the Vegas recently as well. Now, bear in mind, they said that everything was finished and due to be shipped months or years even ago, and suddenly they've come up with this product that they're making right now. That hasn't washed with anyone. It just looks nonsense.
Even kidnappers know to find a recent copy of a newspaper to hold it up to prove that the footage they're producing is being made at a recent date. Yeah. So nothing like that. And there's nothing to prove that this isn't a.
No, nothing. No, in fact, some people have suggested that it's actually stock footage that they've just modified a bit.
Well, that'll come out if that's the case. Then that'll be found out soon enough.
Yeah. They're also refusing to tell anybody where they're manufacturing this product as well, because they say that the factory will then be hounded by trolls, which is just ridiculous. But there you are. So I'm just going to wait for the film to come out of this, because honestly, I think it would make a great film, because it's just, anyway. So there's that. And that's my news. Although something that did come in today, actually completely unrelated to that, is the Mario Odyssey Balloon World update, which I've had a go at for all of about 10 or 15 minutes, and it's rubbish. So in case you didn't know, there's a free update for Mario Odyssey where Luigi appears on each of the worlds, and you go and talk to him, and he said, would you like to hide a balloon, or would you like to find a balloon? And then he gives you some time to go and hide a balloon or find a balloon, and you get some coins.
I'm sorry, hide a balloon is not a euphemism, is that right?
It might be, but not in this case. So you're given so many seconds to go away from him and hide a balloon somewhere, and obviously there's only a set number of places that there could be a balloon, and obviously people are going to all choose the same good hiding places. Already I've done 2 and they've been in almost exactly the same place, and I've only done 4, so that's stupid. It's not a great update. Okay, it's free and it adds a little bit more content to the game, but it seemed a bit of a waste of time. And also, to find people's balloons, you have to give out a code, like friend codes, just for the balloons. So
this sounds like a new game feature where they were limited to not being able to add any new assets and not being able to change any underlying game code.
Possibly. They had to add a balloon and Luigi. So, yeah, maybe.
Well, I bet you the balloon came from some background element, and I bet you that Luigi is a slightly stretched and palette swapped Mario.
Maybe, yeah. He's got some voices as well. But anyway, it's I don't know, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but it seems very, very simple and a bit pointless. So, yeah, not really impressed with that. Anyway, but that's all my news. So, Kendrick, tell us about this game, which absolutely isn't Monster Hunter and certainly doesn't have boobs and singing.
Well,
I've woken up. Just don't say boobs.
Our listener may recall that during the last podcast, I briefly talked about the Shining series, Sega's erstwhile RPG series of games that has been on many platforms and has spanned many genres. There was an announcement last week that Shining Resonance Refrain is coming out for the PlayStation 4 end of March in Japan. It's a remake of a PS3 game that was only released in Japan. What's interesting about this new remake is that there is going to be an English voice track, but there's no indication as to whether or not there'll be menus or any interfaces in English. One suspects that that's more for the wider Asian market than it is for the Western market, because we haven't gotten a new Shining game since the PlayStation 2.
I think they have definitely announced it's definitely coming west with all English.
Has it?
Stuff. Yeah, I think so. I don't think that was in the original announcement, but I think it's come out since. So
you are. I am refreshing my page, and you're right. This is scheduled for a Western release sometime in August or September.
Yeah, I literally only saw it today. It was Niaz actually pointed me at it. So yeah, and I thought, wow, a new Shining game. That's odd after you mentioning it so recently. And then it appeared, and then it was like, wow, no, it's technically not a new one, it's an old one, but just like, yeah. But
well, it's an old one with some new content and, some new assets. But
yeah.
This completely negates the topic I was going to bring up, in that when a game doesn't come out in the West, you have the 7 stages of grief, and you add an 8th stage when you're purchasing a video game, which is to say, okay, I'll just import a copy and learn Japanese. And that hasn't always happened for me, but there are a couple of very widespread cases of this happening to a point where it actually skewed the statistics of who was buying a game and how much of it was selling. The 2 examples that come to mind right away are the original home port of Dead or Alive, the fighting game, which came out on the Saturn, and in Japan only, I should add. And then there was Shenmue 2 on the Dreamcast, which, because of the Microsoft exclusivity deal for the Western release on Xbox, meant that, the American release on the Xbox. What that meant was the only way for American Dreamcast gamers to have Shenmue 2 was to import the UK version, which, because they did it in such numbers, skewed the sales numbers and led Sega of Europe to believe that Dreamcast sales were much better than they actually were, because there's no way of tracking who's buying this, where's the game actually going, who's actually playing it at the end. Obviously, that's less of an issue now that all the systems are connected online all the damn time.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much of this import nonsense is still affecting the judgment of the game companies in terms of how much to produce. And obviously, if Shining Resonance Refrain is coming out in the West, which it clearly is, then someone's paid attention to this, and I'm just going to sit here and I believe the appropriate British term is gobsmacked, that someone's actually listening to Western fans of these kinds of games and looking to serve them.
Yeah, or have they seen how well Monster Hunter World has done, and they've kind of gone, oh, we've got a game that's a bit like that, we could make some money out of this.
So you're saying rather than someone being moved by the content of our podcast, they're looking at the numbers and saying, hey, we want a piece.
Yeah, money. It's always money.
Yeah.
But have you played the PS3 version then, or have you?
I have not, no. I have to admit that during the PS3 era, even though the PlayStation 3 was very import friendly, there was so much content available in the West that it really wasn't a big motivator for me to import anything. It wasn't like the PlayStation and Saturn days where it would be months and sometimes years between releases that I cared about.
Yeah.
So, there's that problem that the market is overall smaller and more divisible is probably something that drives this kind of release too, because if there's money to be made, they need to make it now rather than waiting too long.
Yeah, there is some irony in that now all the consoles are region free, that we don't import anywhere near as much as we used to.
Now the 3DS, notably though, is not region free.
That's true, but I mean that's I'm not saying it's on its way out, but it's nearing its time now, I think. But
is the Switch region free?
yes, completely region free, even to the point where you can buy stuff from the other eShops on your console without changing region.
That's convenient.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 3 accounts on there. Just set up a simple Nintendo account. I've got an American one and I've got a Japanese one, and I've bought stuff on the American eShop and on the Japanese eShop. So and I can play them with my UK account on there. So they're all even to the point where as well, one of the games I downloaded off the Japanese eShop, I deleted it and then re-downloaded it for free from the UK eShop.
Remind me, what's the maximum size of the memory card in the Switch?
It's 32 gig, although you've only got about 25 to play with that's built in. But then it'll actually take. They've tested it with that new 400 gig micro SD card that's out, and it'll see all of that. Supposedly, it supports up to something like 8 terabytes or something. But obviously
400 gig SD card.
There's a 400 gig SD card, yeah. It's about actually it's on offer on Amazon at the moment. It's down to about 160 quid or something from 280.
How do they get that many bits on a small piece of card?
They just cram them in smaller. Yeah.
How do they not worry about a small child swallowing said card?
Well, I don't know. It's your entire digital life being swallowed by a child, there, isn't it? So.
Well, in the case of the actual cartridges themselves, they just apparently make them taste horrible. I tried it and it was fine.
Oh, they're not. No, I tried it as well. Like everyone else who owns Zelda on the Switch, they all licked it. I did.
Yeah, and I kind of was unrepulsed by it.
It's the same stuff. I don't know if you've ever bought it. There's the stuff you can buy that you put on your fingernails that's supposed to dissuade you from biting your fingernails, and it tastes.
HP sauce?
Sorry?
HP sauce?
HP sauce? No.
No, you put that on everything to make it better.
Yeah, it's not chili sauce or anything. No, it's some chemical, and it's supposedly scientifically proven to be disgusting to taste. And I do remember my sister getting addicted to it once a long time ago. But apparently it's the same thing they stick in the cartridges as well. They only need a tiny amount of it in there, and it overwhelms your taste buds apparently. But it didn't taste great, but it didn't taste anywhere near as bad as you'd expect. I mean, if a child really wanted to eat it, they're not going to pay too much attention to how much it tastes, are they? I mean, things kids eat, so yeah.
You don't get very good value for money, do you, with the micro SD card that's 400 gigs? Just looking at it on Amazon now, it's £200 for a 400 gig, and you can get a 200 gig for £70.
Yeah, you always pay way more for the top end one.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
I've got a 128 in mind, and I think I paid about £29 for it.
Yeah. You can always just swap them out,
logically just get 4 of those.
Yeah, because you can swap them around. So
and it's still completely empty because I still haven't actually used up any of my internal storage yet.
No, I haven't got one in mind. The only reason I put a card in mine is if I want to take screenshots off it. The rest of the time there's no card in there. So until obviously Hyrule Warriors comes out on the Switch, and then I might have to down that. So other news then. There was some other recent news this week, Luffer.
Yes, the developers, is it Criterion?
Yes.
They are making a new Burnout game, except it's not a new Burnout game. It's the old Burnout game they're remaking.
Yeah, it's not just the old Burnout game. It's the old Burnout game.
No, it isn't.
Paradise.
Yes, it is.
It's the wrong Burnout game.
It's no.
What is the right Burnout game?
Hang on. So saying it's the wrong Burnout game, that's 2 wrongs. So we have the right Burnout game.
It is the right Burnout game, yes.
No, the right Burnout game is 3.
No. 3 wasn't as good as 2, and Paradise is better than both. So
lies.
Remind me, what was the order of the release? In what sequence did Paradise come out relative to 3?
Oh, it was about 5 or 6.
Paradise is 5. Paradise is 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
It came out in 2008, so that's 10 years ago now. Mm-hmm. It's just quite worrying to believe. Well, scary to think that it's 10 years since the last Burnout game came out.
Yeah.
It's just a bit disappointing that they're remaking an old game rather than actually making a new Burnout game.
Yeah. Well, they did make a new Burnout game, but it wasn't Burnout. It was Need for Speed's Most Wanted.
They did, and they also made Burnout Crash, which was not really Burnout at all.
No, But it is the best Burnout. I mean, on ugvm, I don't know if you were involved at all, Zoe, but we did have some 8-player online stuff where we drove cars off cliffs onto piles of other cars and did that for an entire hour, and that was brilliant.
I was involved, and it was good fun. It had some good multiplayer, but the single player was terrible. The open world was terrible, and the crash mechanics were terrible compared to 3.
No, completely disagree.
Give me a menu and some proper crash junctions.
Yeah, crash junctions. It did miss crash junctions. They were amazing.
Yeah,
I seem to
suppose they were quite good. But...
I seem to recall that when you were setting up the multiplayer sessions, you would all call the game Bernie P for short.
No, some of us would call it Bernie P. Some of us referred to it by its correct name, Burnout Paradise.
Well, my biggest regret now is that I didn't think to make UTI jokes at the time, but that ship has sailed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the reason for calling it Bernie P. Anyway.
Also, any game that opens with the sound of Axl Rose's voice can't possibly be held in high esteem.
No. Anyway, besides that, have you not seen the euphoria around on Twitter about this remaster and how everybody's going to just turn off all of the tracks on the soundtrack apart from Girlfriend by Avril Lavigne? So it just I'd be perfectly happy with that if it means. I mean, it's the only game that I had on Xbox 360 where I actually disabled the soundtrack. And literally it might be the only game in my life I've ever done that on, because I will do anything to not have to hear him. Axl Rose, or not DJ Atomica, because he was. Yeah.
I don't mind DJ Atomica. He's a prick, but he's a lovable prick.
I suppose.
I'm sorry. So what's your opinion of The Offspring? And does that impact your enjoyment of Crazy Taxi?
I'm an Offspring fan. He can't sing at all, but he kind of can't sing in a way that's almost endearing.
That is the ethos of punk, is it not?
Well, yeah, and there's some good catchy songs, and there's some songwriting talent in there, and I have no positive words to say about Guns N' Roses.
So that's funny, because Axl Rose said your album was brilliant.
Oh, well, thanks.
I was going to mention your album, seeing as you were talking about it. So if you would like to mention about your album now would be a good time.
Okay, here's a plug. I released an album last week. My band is called Hellfire Jack. We're better than Guns N' Roses. Please go listen to us.
Okay. I have listened to it. It was good, actually. So. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I did. So there's at least 2 of us now, maybe, unless Luffer's just saying and he hasn't actually listened to it.
No, I've listened to it.
Oh, there you go. Then.
Hooray.
So, yeah.
Oh,
it was rubbish.
I've got fans of the internet.
Just for balance, you have to say that. So at least one of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Only one thing I would say on Burnout Paradise Remaster that hasn't been said is I'm disappointed there's no Switch version. And I realise it can't do 4K. Yeah, I realise it can't do 4K, and I realise it's not as powerful as the PS4 and all that, but it's more powerful than an Xbox 360. So you'd at least get the Xbox 360 version on there. So that's a bit of a shame. And EA are not willing to say either way whether there is one or there isn't one, but it's quite clear that they're not intending to do one at this point. So,
are EA actually supporting the Switch? Because I know they pulled support for all Nintendo consoles in the Wii reign.
Well, they released FE last week, or FE, or whatever it was we decided last episode to call it. They released that, and they obviously released a Switch-specific version of FIFA. Yeah, they're kind of supporting it, but I mean, they also have to bear in mind that it's got quite a much bigger user base than the Wii U did at this stage in its life anyway. Although in actual fact there's more Switches being sold now than Wii U's did in its entire lifetime, so surely EA have to take notice because they like money, don't they? So
well, but if they were making plans based on previous experience, there's a Chinese proverb about that: you do that at your own peril. Yeah. So if they planned wrong, then it's going to take them at least a year and a half to recover and catch up to the cycle.
Yeah, that's true, I suppose.
I'm guessing they also probably have a lot of demographic numbers and realise that the kind of people who have Switches probably aren't necessarily going to be buying EA games.
No, that's true. So, but there are some EA games that would fit the Switch. So, I mean, I know it's already been out, but Unravel would be a good Switch game. That Fee, presumably, they've decided that would make a good Switch game. And, there must be EA games that are suited. I know FIFA has been a bit of a flop on the Switch for them, although they did reduce the price fairly recently in a sale, and it skyrocketed the amount of copies of it. So, I think when they released it, maybe the user base wasn't quite there, and now it is. And so it's taken off a bit. So.
You said a Switch-specific version of FIFA in a somewhat derisive manner, as if it were missing features.
It is missing features. I don't know enough about it to know what features are missing, but I know it's not the same game as it is on the other consoles. I think it's something along the lines of it. In terms of the gameplay, it's the same gameplay, but it's obviously cut down graphics a bit. But I think I don't know if FIFA Ultimate Team is in it. I'm not sure.
But that's a standard. As a standard EA tactic, though, isn't it? To strip all the features out of the game on the first release and then re-add them all again on each new generation of console.
Yeah.
Well, the story mode, the journey, isn't on it because that's specifically made with Frostbite, and they said that they couldn't port Frostbite to the Switch, which is why it uses a slightly modified engine and plays slightly differently. Yeah. Not in a particularly noticeable way, but it is running on a different engine, so that mode had to be lifted out. But apart from that, I think most of the rest of it is in there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What kind of lack of imagination, though, drove them not to make Switch-specific features to distinguish it from the other console ports, like, system-to-system multiplayer, 4-player simultaneous with 4 Joy-Cons?
I think that is there.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I think it is, yeah. I think you can have... I'm going off something I think I read. I think it's 8-player.
Yeah, well, you can do up to 4-player on the other two, so I would assume that you can on Switch as well.
Well, if there are these features, then they're not selling them, to the point where a Yahoo like me is aware of them, then clearly they've done something wrong.
Yeah, I do wonder sometimes if companies like EA, they don't really want to support it, but they show willing to start with so that they don't get the bad press. And then they release a game which is either rubbish or cut down or isn't really what people want to buy, and then they look at the sales figures and they go, well, Switch games aren't selling, we won't do any more of them.
The self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, pretty much. Play! Who shall I choose to go first? Well, seeing you haven't been here for a while, Luffer, let's choose you.
Oh, okay. What have I been playing this week? Main one, I suppose, is Fallout 4 in VR, which came out just before Christmas, but because of my commitments with work and Panto, I've not had a chance to actually play it until now. Overall, very impressive game, I have to say. It's very immersive. It's quite surprising when you put... I still get amazed when I put my VR headset on that houses are the size of houses. It's really quite bizarre. When you see things on the screen, like if you know the game, that you've got the robot Codsworth in it.
Yeah.
And he wanders around and follows you in the town. Well, in VR, he is ginormous. I mean, massive. And I don't understand why he has a big circular saw and a flaming jet inside the house either. That did concern me slightly when I first saw him hovering there with a big flaming jet out of the bottom of his... so that's very impressive. But overall, I haven't been that impressed with the game, I have to say.
Did you play the original Fallout 4 before they VR'd it?
No, okay. I didn't. I bought it and then didn't play it for a bit. Then they announced the VR version was coming out and thought, well, there's no point playing it now. I might as well wait for the VR version to come out. So I've
4 years later
playing it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there's no point. There's no point of reference for comparison from your point of view. It's not as if you can compare the sniper rifle usage between one interface and the other, or the. I'm trying to think of what would be unique to Fallout 4 in terms of.
So one thing I know that's different is that when you use VATS in the regular game, it pauses the game.
No,
you can do what you need to do and then carry on.
It doesn't pause it in the normal game.
It doesn't?
In Fallout 3 and New Vegas, it did. In Fallout 4, it just slows down time. It doesn't actually pause
so it's the same then. So in Fallout 4 VR, it just makes everything go into slow motion, which is quite cool.
I think there's a perk you can get that actually properly does it so it pauses, but by default it doesn't.
Right. So so that's quite cool. So you can slow down time, and then you can, and with the VR movement, you can teleport around rather than actually move. So you can slow things down, and you can teleport behind someone and shoot them in the back. That's quite cool. And then you have blood flying at you in slow motion. But I think I'm kind of hesitant to enjoy it is that there's just too many enemies and far too much combat. I I just don't get it. And it has the one thing that I hate the most in any game, and that's respawning enemies. And it's, in my opinion, that's just the worst gaming mechanic that's ever been devised, respawning enemies.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to, the whole point of Fallout 4, in my view, it's a role-playing game, and you're out there trying to make the world better by getting rid of the raiders and creating settlements and making a nice shiny world again out of this apocalypse. But yet, every time you go back to a cave that you've raided, everyone's back again. It's like you're not actually making any difference to the world.
Yeah.
I think that you might end up enjoying Skyrim VR more than Fallout VR then, because Skyrim notably has fewer respawning enemies than its other Elder Scrolls predecessors.
I mean, it makes it also, given how many enemies there are in the sort of barren wastelands of Fallout. I mean, how did the NPCs actually get anywhere in this world?
Cannibalism.
They say that I've just come from some like Diamond City or some other establishment. But you think, well, you've only got like a rag and a rusty knife. How have you managed to get past all these rad scorpions to get here? It's like, because I'm massively tooled up and even I'm dying. It's like, how have you managed it?
The thing I never liked about I mean, I love Fallout 3 and New Vegas, and 4 not quite so much, but still enough. The thing that I didn't like about them is there's just not enough people in them. And the settlements that are in them, it's like yeah, Diamond City. It's not a city. It's like 12 people live there, and they've got like this thriving community and all these shops and everything. There's 12 people live there. It's ridiculous. You'd expect, okay, I know like most of the world has been wiped out, but that was 200 odd years ago. You'd expect there to be a few more people around, especially in the larger settlements, but there's just not.
I suspect neither of you have explored any of the mods that were created for the purpose of addressing these immersion concerns.
I haven't actually played enough of it yet to venture into the mod scene.
Yeah, apparently the mods for the VR version are dissociated from the regular one because they have to accommodate other interface functions. So a mod that was available on Fallout 4 isn't necessarily available for Fallout 4 VR. So, but a number of the ones that are that don't add any assets that mess with the game logic or the AI or the behavior of the monsters are available. So it's worth checking out. I don't know if you're obsessed enough to want to go to that trouble, though.
Oh, I see how it goes. I mean, what I'm hoping is that games like this, like Fallout VR and what's one you just said, the other one, Skyrim VR. I'm hoping that this will pave the way for more major releases to support VR in future, because they're showing that it can be done and it can be done well. So I'm hoping that it'll encourage other developers to go down the VR route as well.
Right. I can't wait for Doki Doki Literature Club VR.
I mean, there are some. I mean, it's not perfect. There are some things that. I mean, there's a lot of the objects in the game you can't interact with in VR, which is presumably a hangover from it not being designed for VR in the first place. So there are some objects you can pick up and some you can't, and there's some buttons and things you can interact with, and other ones you can't, and it's a bit confusing as to what you can and can't do. And there are a lot of graphical glitches that I'm experiencing, and I don't know if that's a VR thing or whether that's just my graphics card that can't cope.
I suspect it's probably just the engine. It's a pretty typical Bethesda RPG thing, having various graphical glitches and stuff just vibrating randomly on the screen and things appearing through walls and sinking into floors and stuff like that. It's pretty common.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Has anyone else played it? Can they give me any advice? I mean, I'm about 5 or 6 hours in so far, and
it depends which direction you've kind of gone into so far. So there's a nearby town near your first settlement where you meet the Minutemen.
Yes, I've met them.
Okay, I think that's kind of the after you've left there. I think you're free to go anywhere you want, but that the game really directs you towards that to start with, and then after you've done that, it's kind of up to you. So you've probably not got far enough in the game to realise the separate factions yet.
Not really. I went to the Minutemen, and then I went somewhere, and they gave me a mission to go murder other people, which I did in some town somewhere.
Yeah,
can't remember the name of it.
All I will say is until you know the full story, I wouldn't side with any particular faction.
Right.
So don't take the story too far in any direction for any one specific faction, because there's a few places where it's a point of no return. But I mean, that's quite some way on into the game before you get to that level. But some things you do mean the other factions won't like you very much. I mean, it's much like New Vegas in that way. But that's all.
Luffer,
I'd say,
have you
really.
picked up the dog yet?
Oh yes, I found the dog meat. Yeah, I got him. So I've got a question, and that's how does trading work? Because I've got all this stuff, and I can't hold it all, and I can't get rid of it because it's worth money, but I can't find anywhere to sell it.
Okay, it's a bartering system. So anybody who has anything to sell, you can either pay for stuff with bottle caps, or you can pay for stuff with things you have and their bottle cap worth. Okay, so if you've got a load of ammo you don't need, you can use that as payment or part payment for stuff from them. And I can't remember exactly the menu options, and obviously it might be different in VR because I think the display is probably a little bit different. But ultimately, you have your inventory on the left and their inventory on the right. You choose the stuff from their inventory that you want, and you choose the stuff from your inventory that you want to get rid of, and that's pretty much it.
Well, that mechanism is further limited by whether or not the NPC you're interacting with is interested in your stuff and how much they like you.
Yes,
so
that's true.
If they like you more, the prices will be lower. And if they're an arms trader, obviously they'll be interested in your weapons, but not interested in your food. If they're a barkeep, the opposite might be true.
Yeah.
So is it? Can you trade with anyone, or is it just specific people?
No, you can't trade with everyone. The number of people you can trade with can increase depending on how much they like you, as Kendrick said, and also sometimes depending which faction you've decided to side with later on in the game. But generally, anybody who owns a store. So, did you say you've reached Diamond City, or?
Oh no, I haven't reached Diamond City yet. No.
Okay, they've mentioned when you reach Diamond City, there's a number of shops there, and from my playthrough, obviously there was a few people I've traded with before then, but I think by the time when I got to Diamond City, that was the main place I could actually start trading properly. I know certainly before I got there, finding stuff, it was quite difficult. Ammo literally just had to be scavenged from anywhere. There was nowhere really I could find to buy it.
So you're just basically just dumping stuff and not picking stuff up that's worth money because there's nowhere to actually sell it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's no point hoarding a load of irons and teddies and toy cars and stuff like that, really.
Okay. I think that's it for Fallout 4, really. I mean, I'd probably, in terms of actual VR, it's amazing and very immersive. The other thing, the one downside, of course, with playing it in VR is you do have to stand up to play it, because it's room scale.
Oh, and it's only 120 hours long, so it's fine.
Exactly. So after about an hour of playing it, I kind of want to have a break, which is slowing down progress somewhat. And it'd be quite nice if you could play it in VR and then go back to playing it in 2D on your computer. But for whatever reason, they've made two different versions of the game rather than having a VR mode. I'm not sure why they did that, but it's very frustrating that I can't transfer the save from one to the other.
Yeah. You need a VR emulator.
Yes. So that's Fallout 4. Other things I've been driving, I'll go quickly over them. Disk Driving 2 has come out on iOS, which has been a big fan favourite of that on ugvm. Lots of us play that, and the new version is out. I think Zoe's playing that, I know. So I've got a couple of games with him going on, and Niaz as well is playing that. And it's in my opinion, it's a great improvement. I didn't like it at first, but it has grown on me. I'm not a big fan of the microtransactions they've introduced.
Well, of course they have.
Apart from that, the actual gameplay is far superior. You now get 2 flicks instead of 1, which adds a lot of extra tactics to it. And they've also introduced it's like power-ups that you can choose at the beginning. So you can make yourself immune to spikes, or you can make yourself immune to force fields. You can choose to hover and things like that. So there's added gameplay there, which even though what I find very impressive is that even though they've added all these things, they've still somehow managed to balance the game so that even if you're using different power-ups or don't have them, it still somehow manages to balance it so you get a fair race.
Okay.
So they've done a very good job on that side of it, I think.
What tends to happen when I play is I go to take my second go and Luffer's is already on lap 3.
I have actually done all of the time trials and got.
Yeah, but the thing is, as we've discussed previously, Luffer is capable of going round corners, so
this is true.
That might be the reason.
So yeah, if you haven't got Disk Driving 2 yet, I'd strongly recommend you pick it up and join us in the ugvm group, and we can have some games. And the other one I've been playing is Orwell on PC. Has anyone played Orwell?
Not even heard of it.
Not heard of it.
I assume
okay.
It's a calculator that tells you 2 and 2 is 5.
No, it's not. It is. It's kind of a simulation game where you play a kind of Big Brother thing. You have access to people's social media and their emails and their chats and things, and you have to find terrorists. So when the game opens up, a bomb is set off and people are killed, and you're contacted to try and track down who actually planted the bomb and committed the murders. And then during your investigation, and depending on how it goes, more bombs get set off, suspects get killed, and depending on what information you give the government from your investigation determines how the investigation goes and what the outcome is. It's quite interesting. It's fairly limited in some ways because you only have a set number of things you can do, but it does seem to make a difference as to what information you give them. So if you give them the wrong information, then they will follow that and act on it, and then innocent people will be dragged into the investigation. And it also has the whole Orwellian Big Brother thing as to, is this ethically right what you're doing, because you're obviously looking at people's chats and their Facebook and their social media, and having access, and in certain cases having access to their computers. But yeah, I only started playing that because the new version came out today, and someone told me about the new version. So, I haven't played the old version yet, and it was in my Steam library, so I just loaded it up. I only started playing it yesterday, and I think it's 5 days of like they're in chapters. Each day is a different chapter, right. And I played the first 3 days. I
was about to ask you if you thought that there was an agenda in terms of how the game wanted to represent surveillance, because I've always suspected that American procedural crime drama exists for the purpose of normalizing police raids and surveillance cameras. These are things that we would not accept in American society, except that we see them every day on NCIS and CSI. So, for the game to be leading you to question whether or not what you're doing is ethical is kind of reassuring to me.
Yeah, I think that, well, it's interesting because I think the message the game is trying to give you is that this sort of Orwellian system of being able to investigate everything is bad and shouldn't be allowed to happen. But on the other hand, the actual game makes it seem good because it actually catches the terrorists and you get the right result at the end. So it's a difficult one because...
So it's your methods that are determining whether it's morally right or not. I see. So you can't actually get the wrong people caught or anything, is that...
Well, I mean, I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but there is. I mean, it's been out for a couple of years, so I suppose if you haven't played it yet, that's too bad.
Yeah.
But there's one point where if you give them a certain piece of information, one of the suspects is killed.
Oh. And
if you don't, they get arrested.
Okay, but they did it though, yeah.
They did well. I don't want to say whether they did or not because you'll play it to find out.
Sure,
so,
right.
Well, this is the push and pull between making a game that's entertaining and gives you a sense of accomplishment versus making a game that's intended to educate and have a philosophical point. You really can't have both at the same time.
Yeah. So if you played Papers, Please, which was
that was what was in my mind when you were describing it. It sounded similar.
So it's similar vein to Papers, Please. So if you enjoy Papers, Please, it's worth checking out. But it is quite limited. There are only certain bits of information you can use, and sometimes when you give them the information that you think is relevant, the government advisor that you have a contact in the government that you send this information to, and he will twist the information in ways you didn't intend, and you think, well, that's not what it actually said. So it kind of twists. It's got its own agenda as well. And there are certain things that you don't want to tell the government because you think they're not relevant. But if you don't do it, then it doesn't unlock the next part of the game. So you're kind of stuck. It's like, well, I don't want to tell them this, but I have to because if I don't, I can't progress. But it is worth checking out. I think it's on sale on Steam at the moment, and the new version came out today, I believe. So
what's different about the new version then? Is it just...
I think it's just a new investigation, and it has a new mode. So in the original game, you got basically 3 ways you can investigate things. You can look at newspaper clippings and news reports and web pages.
Mm-hmm.
You can do what's called listen, which is like a wiretap, so you can listen to people's phone calls and you can drop in on their instant messaging conversations.
Right.
And then there's another mode where you can actually hack into their computer and you can see what files they've got on their desktop and in their folders. In the new version, I think there's another. They've introduced a new method of investigation, but I don't know what that is because I've not actually looked into it yet. So it's a new investigation with a couple of enhancements to the gameplay.
Oh, right. Okay. Right, well, if that's everything you've been playing, or at least that you want to tell us about, move on to someone else. Kendrick.
Well, very briefly, I'd like to say that I've been playing RPG Maker. I believe the consensus is to call it FES, RPG Maker FES on the 3DS.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't actually powered up the 3DS. I've been just faffing around with graph paper and writing things in a notebook. I've got the barest outline of a original fantasy world story that I don't really have time to develop because of reasons. I originally wanted to make my main topic today Yakuza Kiwami. Which someone noted is £12 now on the PlayStation Network store.
Yeah, it's on sale this week.
Probably to promote the upcoming Yakuza Kiwami 2.
Yes.
But I just very briefly on this topic, I just got past Chapter 10, which is a redone version of that horrible third-person reticle flinging gun battle. Kazuma Kiryu has to lean out of the window of a car being driven by Detective deKay, while men on motorcycles with machine guns and a gentleman sitting on top of a lorry container with a rocket launcher are trying to knock him off the road. And it's impossible. I wish it supported light guns because it's impossible to do it with the left stick on the PS4 controller. I finally got it just by sheer luck on the third try, and I never want to go back to it again. But I'd forgotten that I hated that part of the PS2 game just because the first time around it took me, I think, 20 tries to get past that chapter because that is literally the only thing that happens. There's no fist fights, there's no other story progress. It's just one giant gun battle along the Japanese highway.
Okay. So remind me, the game is what, a remake or a reimagining of the first game? First game? You've dropped out. Hang on, sorry, your audio's gone. Audio's gone. Has everyone else's audio gone?
I've lost Kendrick, yeah.
I've lost Kendrick.
Oh.
Hey.
Oh no.
Hey, I'm still here.
You are still here. You're back. Wait. Okay.
Yeah.
My question was just so I can put this. My question was: so is the game Yakuza Kiwami? Is it a remake of the first game? Or? Yes,
it is. Yes, it is. Kiwami translates. Well, the translators have been translating it as extreme, but probably a more poetic translation of it would be to the limit,
yes,
or at the boundary. But Yakuza Kiwami is using the engine from Yakuza 0 and introduces a number of additional plot elements intended to plug plot holes and explain some things that were left kind of mysterious and inconsistent the first time around.
Okay.
So Yakuza Kiwami 2 is obviously a remake of the second game where Kiryu has to face off against his rival in Osaka, a giant blonde gentleman by the name of Ryuji Goda. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, so I guess the thing that I want to talk about today would be Yakuza 5, which I just started playing this past weekend. And my first thought is that I'm very impressed by the restraint that the creators of the Yakuza series exercised in not using the advanced gameplay methods in Yakuza 5 for the remakes of the earlier games. One thing that jumps out at me in particular, you know how in the Yakuza games, when you start a fight on the street, the onlookers form kind of a invisible wall boundary around you, and then if your fight gets there, they bounce off of the onlookers, and the fight only happens inside this designated area.
Yeah.
In Yakuza 5, something wonderful happens, the fight moves around and the crowd moves with you. So if two combatants are having fisticuffs near some innocent onlookers, they will actually run away. And then the boundary of the combat area is now shifted to further down the street because the ones on the other side of the designated area will move closer to get a better look at what you're doing.
Ooh, so can you have a Simpsons chicken moment where you have a fight across the entire town?
That did happen to me in this first chapter of the game as I was playing it. I went all the way down the street and across a bridge as I was trying to defeat some street punks. There are other advances as well. When the NPCs pick a fight with you, they actually make it clear what their grudge is. Sometimes they're offended that you've ignored them. Sometimes they, are actually trying to extort money out of you on the spot. In one case, there were some people trying to get girls into a host club, and they were angry that I was apparently scaring the girls away or leading them away with my good looks. I don't know. But and then in addition to that, they've added some tutorial bits that explain some stuff that's carried forward from as early as Yakuza 3 that I didn't realize was happening until it was explained to me. When you get into a street fight, there are somewhere anywhere between 3 and 6 combatants, not counting yourself, and one of them is designated as the leader. He's usually the biggest or the best looking one. And if you take him out first, if you knock all of his hit points off first, the rest of his gang will suddenly recoil because their morale has been has been impacted, and so some of them will even run away, robbing you of valuable experience points.
Yeah,
so
I noticed that in 4. I don't remember it from 3, but it was in 4, I think.
Oh yeah, in 3, what would happen was usually the last man standing would look around at all of his fallen comrades and actually fall down on his behind and start begging for mercy. Mm-hmm. And then you could come up to him and grab his ankle and then, fling him around like a dead cat and then smash his head into the wall.
Yeah.
But I'm on one hand, I regret that they didn't put all this stuff back into the earlier games. On the other hand, that would have been kind of missing the point. For Yakuza Kiwami to have all this stuff in it would be to take away from the story that they were telling and the viewpoint of the character. A lot of this additional complexity also reflects, additional complexity in the world that they inhabit. They're getting older. The politics are running away from them. There are younger rivals moving up to replace them. It's an elaborate tapestry, and I love being able to witness it. And I guess my only real regret is that Yakuza 5 did not get a physical media release, but at this rate, we will end up seeing Yakuza Kiwami 5 in about 3 or 4 years' time, because they will eventually get around to remaking it. The original Japanese release of the game was the autumn of 2012. We didn't get it in the West until 3 years later, and then only as a download. Yeah. So I fully expect a remake of 5, as the other remakes trickle out.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Yakuza games. I believe I played 3 very briefly for 2 or 3 hours of gameplay, and for whatever reason never carried on with it. I don't think it was because I didn't like it. I think I just got distracted and sidetracked something else. But are the Yakuza games episodic or are they serialized? So
when you ask if they're serialized, you mean does the story of a previous game impact the events of the subsequent game?
Yes.
Each game is very self-contained. You do not need to have played previous chapters in order to enjoy the game. They stand alone very strongly, and part of the reason for that is because the motivation of the characters change from episode to episode. So in Yakuza 0, you have Kiryu is a young man who's about to make it in organized crime, and his sworn brother Majima is being punished for some unspecified offense. And while that informs the character that they become in the next game, it's a complete arc. The arcs begin and end within each game. And In the case of Yakuza 4 and 5, some characters aren't even playable from game to game. The one that comes to mind right away is Akiyama. He's the moneylender in Yakuza 4. It's only revealed to you in the middle of playing that game that he actually had a small role in one of the earlier games that I won't spoil for you because, it's one of those things that you can enjoy without having played it. It's very self-contained. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I've answered your question.
No, that's perfectly fine. So, yeah, you can play any one of the games and they will stand alone individually. Absolutely. But the characters and their development will continue throughout all of them.
Yes. And Yakuza 3 in particular has a feature very much like Shenmue where they provide you with video recaps of the previous games. So if you're really interested, you can go back and see all of that character development and get caught up and, be informed. But it's not strictly necessary to your enjoyment.
So, I mean, the comparison I'd put is it's not something like Metroid, where Metroid is kind of frozen in time and each game is just a different adventure that could be at any point. It does follow a development of the characters and the story over the whole games, but each one is a standalone adventure in itself.
Yeah, and Yakuza 5 is actually quite poignant in that the main character, Kazuha Kiryu, is almost 50 years old at that point. So he's slowing down, and his viewpoint has changed as a result. He's getting old, and because he's a figure of organized crime, he's getting ready to depart the world. I hope it's not a spoiler to say, because gangster stories don't have happy endings. So that's me.
Okay then, Zoe. Then, if you'd like to wake up, Zoe.
Yeah, I'm awake. Right, I finished Assassin's Creed Oranges.
And did you make up your mind about it in the end?
No, not exactly. I kind of established what I thought already, which was when it's good, it's very good. It's far too long. Most of the stuff that they've added to it makes it worse, and it's broken, but it's good fun.
Okay.
Forza Horizon 3, the Blizzard Mountain expansion, I played through that. It's more Forza Horizon 3, and since that's the best racing game since Burnout 3, that's a good thing.
Paradise.
Yeah, no, great. Yeah. It's the best racing game since Burnout 3, but this time you're up a mountain and there's a blizzard. Perhaps unsurprisingly, there's lots of snow and you can't see, but that's good. I played some PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds for the first time. I played 2 games. I got no kills and 2 deaths, and 2 instances of landing on an island, spending 10 minutes hiding in a small cupboard, waiting for somebody to come and kill me, which they dutifully did.
And so will you be playing this more, or?
I will. I'd like to learn how to be good at it, although I'm not really sure how much I can learn by basically just hiding in a room and waiting to die.
Yeah, I think the whole point of the game is really you can't stay in one place for any length of time, isn't it? I thought.
Well, I thought it was that you could, as if you got the luck of the draw, which I did both times, in that they kind of the circle kept shrinking to where I was anyway. So I just kind of had to find a house where nobody else was, wait until it got down to a few people, and then try and kill somebody. But once it got down to about 30 people and the area was quite small, people started loitering about my house.
So how does this work? Because I only just learnt about this game a couple of days ago. I hadn't even heard of it. And
that's
I'm
impressive.
Intrigued as to, yeah, I know. But I haven't. So
he's had his VR headset on. The rest of the world's just blotted out. Yeah.
What do you have to do in the game? What is the actual game itself?
Okay, so the game itself is a very large island, a big map. I'm trying to think what it's kind of equivalent of in video game size, but it's pretty large. And there are 100 players. And at the start of the game, you are all in a big plane that's flying over the island. And at some point, you jump out at the time of your choosing. And then you parachute down and you land. And then the last man standing wins.
Yeah,
and you just have to...
Like a death match.
It's a death match. It's a last man standing death match. So it's as soon as you die, you're out, and you basically just have to scavenge whatever weapons you can find. Every 5 minutes, there's a big circle on the map, and every 5 minutes it gets a bit smaller, and everybody who's outside the barrier dies. Okay. So over the course of time, everybody's forced into a smaller and smaller area. Because at the beginning, you could be 5 minutes away from the next nearest player. But kind of over time, everybody's forced at this smaller area until kind of it gets towards the end, and there's like a load of you in a very small arena-sized place.
And so, does the circle always end up going to the middle of the island, or can it go to the coast? Or
no, so it can go in any direction.
Right.
Remind me.
Yeah.
PlayerUnknown is not the one with the constructable environment. That's Fortnite, right?
Yeah, that's Fortnite.
Okay.
No, it's very, very tense, but I do need to give it a bit more than 20 minutes. So that's good. Football Manager 2018. I've not bought a Football Manager since 2014, and I've not played one in any real depth since 2012. I'm trying to give this one a bit of a proper go, and they only do kind of incremental updates with each year. But when you've been out for 4 or 5 years, those incremental updates kind of add up. And now I'm just looking at it, and it's just unfathomably complicated.
I heard they've actually made. I know they always say this, but I think rather than just the people who've made it saying this, I think the reviews are suggesting that it is substantially different to others in the series anyway. So even if you'd have played it last year or the year before, I think you may well come to it and see it quite differently.
I mean, most of it's fairly intuitive, but there's just so much stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's incomprehensible how much stuff there is.
I'm led to understand that Football Manager 2018 has a feature in it to account for labor disputes as a result of Brexit. Is that correct?
Yes, it does, yep.
That's phenomenally fiddly, and holy cow, who thought that was worth simulating?
But when you've already got a game which is essentially a massive spreadsheet, I mean, what's adding a few more columns?
So dare I ask, what team are you playing as?
I'm Leeds, and I'm doing very badly because, one, I never was good at Football Manager anyway. I tend to fail. And two, what its ideas of who the best players at Leeds aren't my ideas from having watched Leeds a lot.
Well, they haven't got any good players, have we?
They've got one. But there are a few that like come on for 20 minutes every couple of games, and you think, how are they getting paid to be a professional footballer? So you leave them out of the Football Manager side, then they kick up a fuss, so you stick them in, and then they score 17 goals in 3 games, and they turn out to be the best player in the game. And you're not quite sure how, because presumably whoever does the scouting for the game has never actually seen them kick a football.
So how many seasons are you in?
I've played about 20 hours, and I'm like around about December in my first season, so I'm only about 5 or 6 months in.
A way to go here.
Yeah, a way to go.
That's quite a commitment then, to go through several. If it's 20 hours and you've only halfway through the first season, that's a big commitment to actually play it properly.
Well, I used to buy them every single year religiously up until about 4 years ago, and I don't think I've actually managed to successfully get the whole way through a season since probably 04-05. So It's been about 13 years since I managed to play it for long enough to get through a season, but I'm going to do it this time. And mainly I've been playing a lot of Persona 5, which is even longer than all those other games put together and then some.
I thought you'd kind of mostly given up on this because you got bored of it. Is that not the case? Or?
Well, I didn't. It's because it's so long, I tend to do a dungeon and then I play something else, then I come back to it. But I played something else, and then kind of Christmas happened and all of the million releases, and there was just a massive backlog that just kept piling up, and I got Assassin's Creed for Christmas as well, so I just kind of put it on the back burner for a bit. But I've now got back into it. I've just finished the 5th palace. I'm led to believe that there are 7.
Oh, right.
The story is ramping up. It's getting quite exciting. It's still too long. I think I've 47 hours in, and I was wrapping up Persona 4 at this point. And I feel like I'm about halfway through this one.
But are you enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it more now than I was.
Do you still recall that the game begins with a flashback that purports to, show the end of the game?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It gets referenced like quite repeatedly throughout the game as well.
Is this something in game? So is this the character in the game has some kind of premonition of what's going to happen at the end, or is it just for the player to see? Is it just for your benefit?
Well, the intro, the kind of first 20 minutes of gameplay is set about 6 months after when the actual main game starts. So you do a scene and then a thing happens, and then basically you just get whisked back 6 months, and you are basically playing up to that scene that you've already played.
Oh, right, okay. So
and then there's kind of like a flash forward to an interrogation scene that kind of happens every few hours in the main game. That's all kind of going back to that same point that was in the intro.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I am enjoying it. I'm clicking more with it now than I was. But I think because Palace 4 was so long and so dull and so tedious, I felt I needed to take a bit of an extended break. 5 was not quite as painful. There was one bit where I just used a guide to get through it because it would have taken me 6 years otherwise, because it was like so absurdly complicated. There's a load of like door switch puzzles, like 40 door switch puzzles that you had to get right in the right order, and no, not doing that.
Have you adjusted the difficulty level at this point?
It's on the bottom. It's been on the bottom since about 10 hours in.
And you still had to use. I'm not judging you, to be clear, but I hate that the difficulty setting only affects the combat and not any of this, puzzle nonsense that gets in the way of the plot progression.
Yeah, it's a big mechanical puzzle that either requires an extremely good lateral mind that I don't have, or it requires more likely a large amount of trial and error.
So that's going to be flashbacks of playing the text adventures and then writing down a bit of paper, the maze, so you couldn't get lost.
No, it's kind of like it's like doing the Lost Woods. You can work out how to do it, but it will just take forever, and there's no point.
Yeah, it takes the fun away.
Yeah, it's a bad bit of design that sadly it's more enjoyable if you look up how to not have to bother playing it. Yeah, that's me.
Okay, so stuff I've been playing then. I'll do these in shortest to longest, probably, I think. So one thing I've been playing is a game called Yodanji, which is a roguelike with yokai in it. And for those who don't know what yokai is, they're the supernatural Japanese monsters. The same things that appear in Level 5's Yokai Watch games on the 3DS. So there's things like the paper lantern sprite and the spirits of old umbrellas and weird household objects with eyes and stuff like that. Monsters with horns, that sort of thing. And there's about 25 of these in the game, and you start off as one of 3 of them that are unlocked from the start. You play it just like a normal kind of roguelike. So there's a dungeon with, I think, 10 levels, but I've never made it to the bottom, so I don't know. You have to find a number of scrolls along the way, and when you've got all the scrolls, you give them to somebody at the bottom of the dungeon, and it unlocks one of the other yokai. And that's pretty much it. So it's really simple. There's not much to it. Each level you go down, there's an item you can find that levels your character up a bit. You can unlock a few extra skills, and they vary depending on your yokai. So there's one that lets you freeze characters. There's another one that lets you shoot them from a distance. There's another one that lets you go invisible, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's pretty simple. It was really cheap. It's really basic looking. It's like 8-bit graphics, but it looks just like an old Rogue game, and it's quite fun. So each game you play on, it's only about 10 minutes long.
What drove you to buy that?
Somebody recommended it to me. For some reason, I ended up after Christmas with nearly 100 quid's worth of eShop credit. And then they had there've been a couple of quite large sales since Christmas as well on there, and I was just saying, is there anything on here? Because some people know the kind of games I like. Just ask people what sort of thing would I like, and they said you'll like this. And turned out I did. It was quite good. So I think it's been on Steam for about 4 years, and it's probably about 20p on there. So that's probably the better way for most people to start playing it, I think. But yeah, it was enjoyable. If you like roguelikes, then it's as good as any, I suppose. So there's that, and I've also been playing another game which is a roguelite, I think they call them, is Enter the Gungeon. So it's a twin-stick shooter, but it's one of those permanent death ones, and then you have to go back to the start and do it all over again. And it's quite fun. It's ridiculously hard. At the end of every level there's a massive boss, which seem to be semi-random. So at the end of the first level you seem to get one of about 3 or 4. At the end of the second level you get a different selection of 3 or 4 to choose from. 2 or 3 of them are completely impossible. So if you get those, then that's it. You may as well give up. That's it, really. It's got nice combat. It's got this nice mechanic of like flipping up tables that you can use as shields for all the baddies that are wandering around. There's a shop in it, so every time you kill some baddies, you get these. Well, they're not coins; they're actually like gun shells that you can spend, so you can upgrade your armor or your health, or buy other guns, or whatever. And it's good. And one particularly good thing about it is they have this like dodge roll button. So half the time when you're fighting, especially the bosses, it's basically like a bullet hell shooter. So there's bullets all over the screen, and you can dodge some of them, but obviously you're not going to dodge them all. So you've got this roll where you kind of like dive over them into a roll, and so you're invincible for a few frames of animation. So that's pretty good. Adds a bit more to it than just a normal twin stick shooter. So it's fun. It's really good. It's really addictive. As soon as you die, there's a kind of a do you want to go back to the main menu, or just using the character that you've chosen to go in, just start the dungeon again. And it's very tempting often to press that and I'll just have one more run. So yeah, it's good. Again, that's been on Steam for I don't know how long. I've even got it on Steam, but I never played it. And I think I've even got it on the PS4 as well and never played it. So why I went and bought it on the Switch, I don't know. But there you are. And that was a recommendation to me as well. Have anybody else played it by any chance?
I've never heard of it.
I'm interested to play it, but I've never. The opportunity hasn't presented itself yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of looked at it like the graphical style, and then it was going out like it's a roguelike, and I was thinking, I don't know. It reminds me a lot of Rogue Legacy, actually, although it's a completely different play style, because that's a sideways scrolling platform hack and slashy thing, whereas this is a from above Smash TV Robotron type thing. But I don't know. It's the same itch it scratches, I suppose, really. There's a bit less progression from run to run. You can't carry over any skills or any weapons really, but apart from that, it feels the same. If that makes sense. So I've also been playing Grand Theft Auto 5, which again is many years old now. Something
let's clarify. Have you been playing the single player, or have you been playing Grand Theft Auto Online?
Single player. So I accidentally pressed the wrong button once and ended up in online mode, and then hang on, what's going on here? No.
Is this your first playthrough or just a replay?
It's my first playthrough, but I did actually start playing it just over a year ago. I picked it up cheap on the PlayStation 4, played it for a little while, then Switch came out, and then I didn't play anymore. But over the last month, I've got back into it. So I think before I was probably about 15 or maybe 20 hours in. And now I must be coming up to about 40 or 50 hours in, I think. I was hoping to actually finish it up last night and finish without spoilers, although hopefully other people have played it. I've done the last heist, and then thought that's it. And then there's a bit of a twist. And you're asked to make one of a decision. There's 3 decisions, which I won't go into, but I've chosen the Death Wish choice, which appears to have given me another mission, which is quite hard. So I gave up on that last night, but hopefully we'll be able to do it next time. But in terms of actually playing it, I've been avoiding most of the side quests because I really just want to go through the story and get it finished, although it's sometimes difficult to tell which are side quests and which aren't, because some of the side quests you seem to have to be able to complete in order to progress the story, but it's not made clear to you which ones they are. So
I recall that problem in Grand Theft Auto 4. It wasn't clear to me if you had to finish Brucey's races in order to have access to the vehicles you needed for the other missions.
Yeah, it's much the same as that. It's not as much fun as GTA 4 was. I'm not sure why. I mean, it's still funny, and it's still, the driving around is still good, and the characters are still great, and I don't know, I get the feeling it's too big, in the same way that I found Vice City much better than San Andreas. San Andreas technically was the better game. You know, there was more to do, there was more vehicles, you know, you had your jetpacks, and you could go swimming, and all kinds of things, but Vice City seemed to be the better game, and this feels kind of similar to that, really. So
I still think Vice City is the best Grand Theft Auto.
It's got the best soundtrack, certainly, but yeah.
I've tried to start, I should say, Grand Theft Auto 5 3 or 4 times now, and I find the multiple characters off-putting. Yeah. When I played Grand Theft Auto 4, which is still my favorite of all the series, I got really invested in Niko Bellic. I sympathized with him, even if I didn't agree with all of the decisions he was forced to make. Yeah. And I really got involved in his story. Yeah. I never felt that same connection to any of the 3 yahoos that are running around in San Andreas in GTA 5. And I'm not quite sure why that is.
Well,
No,
none of them
I don't
was
think.
particularly likable, were they? That was the main problem with that one.
Well, arguably Nico Bellic isn't all that likable, in spite of his, Eastern European charm and his.
But with
scruffy
Nico
beard.
Bellic, I think it's kind of he's sort of born into that situation, and it's not really a choice that he's made. It's he's kind of forced into that position, isn't he?
Yeah, mind you, I think Michael is as well to a degree in this, because he's led that life, he's left it, he's gone away, and then he's been drawn back into it. He's been pulled back into it by Trevor, basically. So there is that there, but none of the three in this are as you say, they're not as likable. Franklin's kind of okay in terms of morals. He seems to be the one with the best morals, but the one with who wants to just end it all and retire is Michael. So it's a bit confusing. And then Trevor's just a nasty psychopath.
He is brilliant, though.
He is.
He's my favourite character out of all of them.
I did something yesterday actually. So I was playing a mission and the mission finished, and I'd been playing as Franklin, and there were no more missions available for Franklin, so I switched to Trevor. And it switches to Trevor, and he's sat on the top of a mountain. He's very hungover. He stands up, he drops a bottle, he says, I'm last one standing again, and he's wearing a dress.
So I remember that. Happened to me as well.
Yeah, and then in the next scene, I thought, right, well, I can't be bothered walking however far I need to get off this mountain. I'll go and play as Michael or whatever. And the next time you see Trevor, you're about to start planning a heist, and they're all in the office in the strip club. And I walked in as either Michael or Franklin, I forget which, and I come in, and there he is, just walking around still in his dress. But he's completely nuts. I mean, he's funny. He is funny, and I can understand some of where he's coming from in the game. But he's so violent, and I nearly turned off the game and just stopped playing it at the torture scene where you've got to choose the different torture methods.
Yes.
That was really difficult to play, I found.
I'd forgotten that. That's nasty.
Yeah, that wasn't good. And there's a couple of other bits, and but at least they weren't. There's a couple of other bits where he's almost as bad, but you don't actually have any interaction in it. It's actually him doing it and the computer taking over, or such as when he kills the guy near the beginning by stamping on his head. It's not you actually pressing the button to stamp on his head. It just happens. So, But anyway, so I'm right near the end, nearly finished, and I think I'm taking the hardest way out. So we'll see how that goes. I don't think I'm going to go back and do any of the side missions. I don't know. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of fun there, but I just can't be bothered, I don't think. So other than that, and just before that actually, and I did mention it last time, I was playing Wolfenstein: The New Order. Well, I've since completed that, and it was good. It was really good actually. It was a lot better than I expected. And I'm kind of wishing I sort of bought it when it came out rather than waiting until it was a few pence, because it was worth it. And then straight after completing that, I went on and did Wolfenstein: The Old Blood as well, which I didn't find quite as good as the New Order. So in the New Order, I mean, there's a load of like fantasy weapons and lasers, and there's a trip to the moon, and there's all those like giant robot dogs and those massive tripod. Well, they're not tripods because they're 4 legs, but you know what I mean. The huge, great big robots stomping around the place, and the one you have to kill in London, and all that kind of thing. And that was all great. There was actually some nasty gore scenes in that as well, like the bit where they rip someone's brain and spine out. That was a bit awkward, especially when the first time it happens, your character looks away, and then in a later scene when it replays it back, you actually get to see it happen, and you think, oh, I thought I'd missed that now, and now it's being shown again. But anyway, so yes, the New Order was great. But the Old Blood, I don't know. I'm
led to believe that the Old Blood literally recycles the story of the first game point for point, just in slightly different settings. Like the New Order had a trip to the moon. Do you mean the New Order, or do you mean Wolfenstein 3D? Well, okay. Now that you say that, I'm not sure, but I feel like that the trip to the moon was just replaced with a trip to Mars, and that a trip to a mission to go get this thing.
No, I think you're thinking of the New Colossus as the new game.
Yes, I am.
I've not moved on to that yet. So the Old Blood is set directly before the beginning of the New Order, but it came out after the New Order. If that makes sense. I missed
the days when they numbered games so that you could tell which ones came where.
Oh yeah, I mean, there've been at least 3 Wolfenstein games just called Wolfenstein. So, yeah. Anyway, so the Old Blood is set beforehand, so there aren't any of the fantasy weapons. Not really, anyway. Obviously, the Nazis are quite technologically advanced at this point in 1946 or whatever, more so than they are in our real timeline anyway. But they've not got to the point where they've managed to build rockets to the moon or anything like that. So there's no lasers, there's no cutting through wire mesh and stuff with your laser cutter and stuff like that. But in terms of gameplay, there's a few differences as well. So I noticed that open areas seem to be much bigger and much more open. Okay, I mean, there's still cover and stuff, but they seem to be much larger areas, filled generally with a lot more people as well. And also on the other side of that, enclosed areas like corridors and things like that are much more enclosed. So like literally just narrow caves and narrow corridors and narrow stairways and things like that. So that makes a big difference as well. And I'm pretty sure it was in the New Order, but not to the same extent. But there's a mechanic where you're let into a room and there are loads of enemies in there, and there's 1 or 2 commanders in the room, and like Luffer was saying before about enemies that just keep respawning. They literally, the Nazis just keep respawning until you've killed the commanders in the room, which is great. But sometimes they're so hard to find the commanders. They're easy to kill because they're never armoured and they're never heavily weaponized or anything like that. But it's actually finding them. They could be like hiding in a cupboard or in the toilets or something like that.
You normally get a thing on your hood.
Yeah,
like
it tells you how far away.
mark.
It tells you how far away they are, but it doesn't tell you where they are. So it tells you that there's a signal coming from like 40 meters away or something like that. But when you're running, if you manage to do it stealthily, if you manage to not trigger any of the alarms or any of the guards seeing you, it's a bit easier. I can't play like that. I just tend to take out as many as possible before they see me. But inevitably they'll see me, and then I just have to run, try and find the commander, and then take him down. So it made a few bits probably more difficult than they really needed to be. That's probably down to how I was playing it rather than anything else. But there's that. And then halfway through the game, or just after halfway through the game, suddenly there's zombies.
Yeah. I was preferring the New Order to the Old Blood until that point.
Oh, really?
I thought it was a more focused, concentrated, less fillery, good shooty bang bang game. Yeah. And then it went and fell apart. But
it was good anyway. It just wasn't as good as the New Order. So I am looking forward to even more now. The next one, which have you finished yet? So I can't remember whether you mentioned.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
It's it plays basically the same. So it's functional, but not a great shooter. But if you thought that the first 2 were absurd, then you ain't seen nothing yet.
Which of the 2 is it more like?
It's more like the first one.
Right, okay. Well, that's good then, because that's, yeah. Okay, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm just going to quickly mention Fire Emblem Warriors, because I felt that needs to be said. I've played that a lot. But apart from that, that's me.
Andy, on that subject, what do you think of the controversy around Dynasty Warriors 9? Is that...
I haven't seen it, because despite how much I like Fire Emblem Warriors and Hyrule Warriors, I just don't look at anything else, even if they're similar, to be honest. Right. So what's the controversy?
Dynasty or Dynasty Warriors 9 introduces a new open world concept. It's essentially trying to be Grand Theft Auto or an Elder Scrolls game, but with Dynasty Warriors combat.
Okay.
You can imagine for yourself how well that works. It's been found that it doesn't really work as well as they meant it to, because nothing's been retuned. It's essentially the old game, but with gigantic maps and breadcrumb pointers. And so there's all of the same problems that were in previous Warriors games, but now with a lot of fetching and moving very slowly to the next fight in between. So it's, I just wanted to mention it because I wasn't sure if it was something on your radar.
It wasn't on my radar, and it probably won't be now.
well, there's a danger that Tecmo Koei will love this system so much, in spite of the player feedback, that they may decide to implement it for the other Warriors game spin-offs. Yeah. So just something to catch up on if you're interested in future spin-offs.
Well, okay. Well, let's see how it turns out, I suppose. Right, that's everything we've been playing then, and we have a few listener questions to just go through. The first one of these is from Jolly Nice Soup, and he says, Fire Bunny, Platyduck, or Stoner Monkey? And hilariously, Twitter suggested that we should translate this from Swedish. I'm not sure.
I don't know
how
any of
Swedish
those Pokemon.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they were Pokemon.
No.
So
this is the thing. They're not Pokemon. I did put in the notes to talk about it as news about a possible leak of the starter Pokemon for the new Pokemon Switch game. And it turns out that it was just some guy who'd drawn some Pokemon that he thought would be good. So they don't actually exist. But that didn't stop me asking everybody whether they were on Team Fire Bunny or Team Platyduck or Team Stoner Monkey. The names are mine, by the way, rather than actual ones, because I couldn't read the Japanese names that he'd given them. But ultimately, yeah. So one is a Fire Bunny. One is some kind of cross between a platypus and a duck, which I realise a platypus is already partially duck, but bear with me. And the other one is some kind of monkey that looked a bit stoned, and obviously was the grass type. So, and obviously Fire Bunny's the winner. So that's my answer there. And I'm guessing none of you care because firstly they're Pokemon, secondly don't exist.
I'm going to pick Stoner Monkey just because it's got Stoner in the name.
Yeah, that was the one.
I'm going to pick Platyduck because I googled all three of these to see what they actually were, and there is actually a mock-up of a Pokemon called Platyduck on the internet.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, maybe that's where you got the idea from. But
I want desperately to make a racial conflict joke with the Pokemon White and Pokemon Black versions of the game, but being American, I just feel much more pain than humor in that concept, so I'm just going to drop it now.
Okay, right. Well, moving on then. So Gazimod's question is, best tipple for cleaning the heads of the Commodore 64's data set? And I would suggest it's the same cleaner you'd use for any other plastic toy.
Whatever's got the most alcohol in it. Some Andorran absinthe.
Yeah, probably. Or just get a hose on it. It'll be fine.
Do you import Everclear to the UK?
I don't know what that is. No.
Everclear is made, I believe, in Ohio. It is essentially pure grain alcohol distilled to the point where the vapor coming off of it is the same percentage as the fluid. It's at that balanced state of, I can't remember what the technical term is for that, but it's 190 proof, which is essentially 95%. Right. It is illegal in 21 of the 50 states, and the instructions on the very thick glass bottle indicate that you are not to consume it directly, that it must be mixed with something, otherwise you will go blind.
That sounds great.
It does sound great, yeah. That may well clean it. I suspect it may actually evaporate before it gets anywhere near it, but okay. Just to be more serious, perhaps, just any other tape head cleaner would probably be fine because it's just a tape recorder.
When I saw this question in the notes, I was prompted to remember that there's something of a revival of cassette tape technology, thanks in part to the Guardians of the Galaxy motion pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that they're actually reissuing and remanufacturing some of the old cassette tape equipment, and that includes not just the media and the players, but the tape head cleaners as well. So you may find that the cassette drive cleaners are more available now than they were before. I'm not sure how long that fad will last, but certainly it's coincidentally a thing now.
Hipsters, eh? Brilliant.
I can't imagine why it would last, because cassette tape was always a terrible medium to begin with.
It was just because it was cheap. That was the only reason we had it.
Exactly.
Thermal Satsuma says, I've just got round to playing the freebie Batman Telltale game on the PS4 and enjoyed it. Has anyone played Season 2?
No. I didn't know it even existed, so I'm very excited to go and play this straight after this podcast, because now I know that it exists. I'm going to go and play the first one.
Okay.
It's been on my list since it came out, and I keep not quite getting around to buying it in sales because it's never quite cheap enough. So I was
Season
really
2
happy
or
when
Season 1?
Season 1. So I was very happy when they gave it away. So it's next on my to play pile. I'll be playing episode 1 as soon as I wrap up the current Palace on Persona.
Okay.
I didn't realise Season 2 was out.
So I'm guessing we don't know the answer to his second question then, which is, do your decisions carry on to that one?
It's a Telltale game, so I would imagine they do.
Okay. Also, be honest now, how many of you shagged Catwoman?
In the game or just in general?
I've never met one, so I don't know. And I'm also assuming it's the one from Batman, not the one from The Simpsons. So,
also, is that a spoiler?
I've no idea.
Well, as I haven't played it yet, I will make sure I do that when I do play it.
Okay, yeah, that's probably the aim of the game, I would have thought.
Yeah.
I hate to be the outlier here, but I don't find the Telltale games as much fun as others do, and I can only conclude that means there's something wrong with me. But I feel like a Batman game needs to be open world. Arkham Asylum, in as much as that's not really an open world game, but a series of linear events. But that always made much more sense to me in terms of Batman narrative instead of the Telltale method of imparting the story with what's essentially menu choices.
Yeah, I don't know. I've mentioned before, but I think I prefer earlier Telltale games that are a bit more like point and click adventures rather than just as you're saying, just choices. The ones where you actually had proper puzzles and stuff rather than a decision and some QTEs.
Yeah, I started playing the the Walking Dead series that they did. I played the first couple of episodes and then just kind of got tired of the whole game mechanic. So I'm not sure how I'll get on with Batman, but I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
I'll report back in the next podcast.
I really liked The Walking Dead, and I thought The Wolf Among Us was even better, and they're the only modern Telltale games I've played.
Yeah.
I played Back to the Future back in the day, but that was terrible.
Rubbish. It was brilliant.
Oh, yes, I did play that too.
It was really good. So, how dare you? Anyway, Fizzy Chicken says, I want to introduce my 10-year-old son to deeper games like RPG, strategy, and city builders. Which games would you recommend as good intros to these genres for kids?
Is Breath of the Wild an RPG?
No.
Does it have to have loads of numbers?
In my mind, yeah. I think it might come under possibly action RPG.
So can we say for RPG Zelda?
No. Breath of the Wild, yes, but other Zeldas don't.
If not
the
Zelda,
past, really?
I wouldn't class any of them as role playing unless you're going down the point where a role playing game is any game where you play a role.
So any game.
Yeah, exactly. So there's got to be a line, and the line is not Zelda. Zelda's not.
If not Zelda, and if we're limiting ourselves to current game systems that a 10-year-old would be likely to have at hand, then how do we feel about Fantasy Life on the 3DS?
Yes, that was going to be one of my choices, actually, because it's definitely a role-playing game. It's quite light in role-playing bits. It's not too difficult, and it's very varied as well, because you can play any of the roles, the fighter and the archer and the chef and the carpenter and the miner and seamstress and whatever else there was. So yeah, there's a lot of different bits to it. So
I'd be tempted to throw in Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I suppose I wouldn't class that as a role-playing game in the way, but yes, definitely. But I don't know. I think 10 maybe. I don't know.
Animal Crossing seems to have a lot of obligation in it.
Sorry, 10 is too young for it? Or?
I don't know. I think 10 would be the age where it's kind of like you're not young enough for it to be fun because it's kiddie, and you're not old enough to kind of like just accept it for a game. You'd be at the age where it's going, I'm not playing this. This is for kids. You see what I mean? Maybe. I don't know.
No, that's reasonable, especially a young boy.
Maybe,
you're gonna. You want action and adventure and achievement and explosions and breasts.
So Pokemon then.
Excellent.
No, but seriously, I think Pokemon would be a good choice for a role-playing game. But I'd be surprised if he wasn't already either into Pokemon or discounted it. Surely by now he would have, one or the other.
Strategy is a harder needle to thread because most anything that would be classified as a strategy RPG, or a tactical grid-based thing, or worst of all, real-time strategy, those all require, the kind of brain power commitment that you might not have at 10.
I don't know. I was playing Command and Conquer Red Alert at 10. Well, not Command and Conquer, but the Red Alert, I'm sorry. But certainly those sorts of games at that age.
Yeah.
Surprising lack of RTS on the 3DS, though, and on the Switch to start with.
Yeah.
Although now it comes to mind Lego Battles. which was an original DS game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was an okay game, but technically it was quite flawed. It was very, very clunky. If you're going to get somebody into that genre, you want to give them something that's easy to get into. You want to give something that doesn't is much more simple to control, much more simple, simplified menus, and something that looks the part as well. Lego Battles looked awful.
Well, I would suggest getting onto GOG and finding games from simpler times.
Yeah,
I was thinking things like SimCity 2000 and Dungeon Keeper.
Yeah,
I was going to say things like Theme Hospital, because that comes to mind.
Yeah,
and,
Theme Park, Theme Hospital,
Tycoon.
Yeah,
Advance Wars.
Yeah, that's pretty simple.
That's a good shout. That's a great game.
Yeah.
Is there a 3DS Advance Wars? I can't remember now.
No.
That's a crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the last one we had was Dual Strike on the DS.
There was a follow-up to that one.
There was
Dawn of
the
Sorrow.
the technically quite good but thematically awful gritty reboot or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was called Dawn of Sorrow here and Days of Ruin in America, I think.
Yeah,
yes,
probably.
that is.
And it basically just everything was brown.
But yeah, any of them apart from that one would probably be fine. Something slightly different I was going to suggest was Dragon Quest Builders. Which is a RPG, and it's not a city builder, but it's a builder in the same way that Minecraft is. So I've played the demo of that, and I've been hearing lots of good things about it. Everybody went into it going, oh yeah, it's just Dragon Quest, only it's Minecraft. But it seems that it really does hold its own as well. It's his own game rather than just being a clone of other things. Any other suggestions? Or
City Skylines, if you're looking for something a bit more in depth. I don't have kids, so I don't really know how advanced the 10-year-olds are these days.
More than
City
you,
Skylines is a good game.
Last question. Chloe Mathbury says, best games featuring kittens, please discuss. So, actually, there is one thing I'd like to say about this. There was a game that I saw previewed probably about 4 or 5 years ago that involved collecting lots of different types of cat. And it was all kind of cartoony, and it was all in that kind of I'm trying to think of the what's that cat that's doing the rounds at the moment as a character on everything, the big fat cat with the little ears and the.
You're not thinking of Grumpy Cat. You're thinking of someone else.
No, something I can't remember. Anyway, but it was the kind of if anybody else knows that kind of graphical style, and then it just disappeared. There was loads and loads of articles about it all over the place, and how it was going to be the next big thing, and how it was going to be on every platform known to man, and how it was going to be fantastic, and it just disappeared. Did I dream this?
You might have done.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that a game had piles of hype, and then the people making it couldn't deliver.
Well, they re-announced some game called Mugenics recently, and I thought, that's it, that's the one. And I looked at it and went, no, it's not. It's different.
Well, I'd say that the best game featuring a kitten is probably Shenmue by default. However, Shenmue also features the worst kitten in gaming history. Actually, no,
the neediest kitten for sure.
I don't have anything against the cat. Just that girl that looks after her, who needs to be launched into the sun.
Yeah, there is that.
Also, Sonic Adventure. That's got a pretty good cat.
Big the cat. That's not a kitten, though.
Well, I don't think she means kittens,
he is.
literally. There aren't that many games with actual kittens.
The only one that springs to mind is cats.
Well, yeah, there's cats and Nintendogs.
Tokyo Jungle has cats and kittens.
Yes, it does. Bubsy, he's back.
He's also not a cat.
Isn't he? He looks like a cat.
I think he is a cat, isn't he?
He's a bobcat.
I've always thought it was a cat. Well, cat, there you go.
I thought they were technically some different genus, but anyway, yeah, but he's... No, that's awful anyway.
Persona 5 has a cat in a leading role. Is Felicia from the Darkstalkers technically a kitten?
Batman.
Oh, okay. You took my thought and finished it. You took it to the logical conclusion.
I don't think she's a kitten either. In fact, I'm pretty sure she says in Batman Returns she's not a kitten.
Animal Crossing has lots of cats.
It does. Okay, Animal Crossing then.
Yeah.
And we will leave it at that.
Well, actually, I'm looking through my handy game database now. I'm struggling to come up with a game where a cat or a kitten is actually the player-controlled character, and the Garfield tie-ins don't count.
Tokyo Jungle, you can play as a kitten.
Yes, but you're not exclusively playing as a kitten because you progress.
Well, you are if you keep dying.
Well, yes.
Well, it depends if Bubsy counts as a cat or not.
But Bubsy's not a kitten anyway.
What about Pix? Pix the cat?
Not a kitten. I don't think. I don't know. Not even real. It's not. It's just a. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. We'll go back to Animal Crossing. Well, Katie the kitten's in Animal Crossing. There you go. That's literally a kitten. And
is Doraemon a cat?
Yeah, a cat with no ears.
And an interdimensional TARDIS pocket in his belly.
Yeah, just because that's what you have. I don't think
there's been like a million Doraemon games, although I think we've only gotten one or two in the West.
Yeah, I think in the UK we got one, and that was right near the end of the life of the Mega Drive, I think.
Is Mewtwo a cat? Because it looks like a cat.
No, it's a Pokemon.
Oh, sorry.
That was confused me as well. There are no actual animals in Pokemon other than Pokemon, are there? There's no just normal dogs and cats and horses. They're all just Pokemon.
Where do they get the meat for food? Do they actually eat Pokemon?
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, or they're all vegetarians. I don't know. That's always disturbing.
Is King from the Tekken series technically a cat, or is he a human wearing a cat?
No, he's wearing a mask.
All right.
It's a man wearing a lion mask.
There were fewer polygons back then. I can never tell.
Oh, in the CGI intro for Tekken 2, I think it was, you can see him kind of like falling over in an alleyway, and then his mask lands in a bin.
Oh, I remember that. And then his mentor enters the alley from the shadows.
Yeah.
Or something. Oh wait, okay, I've got it. The Elder Scrolls series, because you can actually play as a cat.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah,
but not a kitten.
That'll do.
Well, if you install a mod that permits, children to be protagonists. Although, wait, did they do that for any of the Elder Scrolls games, or was that only for Fallout?
I'm pretty sure they did it for Skyrim.
Okay, because I remember in Fallout that was one of the really controversial mods where you would become a pre-teen combatant in the post-apocalyptic. We've deviated from the question a bit now, haven't we?
Just a bit, yeah.
Okay, so Animal Crossing.
Yeah, that'll do. That's as good an answer as any, I suppose. And that's it then. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you to the three of you for joining me. And anybody who would like to send us any comments or questions or anything like that, if you would like to send them to our Twitter account, which is at ugvm podcast, or email us. We've never received an email at all.
Well, you'd never give an email address out.
I have. I give it out every episode. It's podcast@ugvm.org.uk. But nobody ever uses it. But then nobody uses email anymore, apart from spammers and Russians. So. You can also see some stuff probably on our Steam curator page, which I'll admit I haven't looked at for a little while, but then I haven't opened Steam for a little while. And you can, if you want to, follow me on Twitter at deKay01. Would anybody else like to plug anything? Let's go to Zoe so he can plug his band again.
Yeah, we're Hellfire Jack. We're on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and those places. Come and say hello. We've got 2 videos and an album. It's very exciting. Elsewhere,
the music is a bit more enthusiastic than you make it out to be.
Oh well, I'm just hitting things, so
Sure.
There's no kind of real emotion from me either way. But Alex is quite enthusiastic. Elsewhere, you can find me in a more personal capacity at Zamoniac.
Okay, and Luffer.
Well, I'm at Luffer virtually everywhere, so if you search for that, you'll find me.
Okay, and Kendrick?
If you're interested in modifying retro game consoles, come see us at GameSX.com.
Okay. Yes, do all those things and buy that thing and visit us at those places. And join us again soon for another episode. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios.